Bright and shining faces this morning all over America as we celebrate the last Sunday in August and this tremendous story that we just heard in our gospel lesson today about Jesus curing the woman who had been crippled for 18 years on the Sabbath. In his message to the folks in the synagogue, Jesus uses as an example of healing on the Sabbath and work being performed on the Sabbath, mercy towards animals, and in particular says, wouldn't any of you untie your ox or your donkey and lead them to water in the manger to help them, even if it was the Sabbath day? And of course, everyone in the room recognizes, of course, they would do that. It's just because it's the Sabbath day, people still need relief from the heat. They still need water to drink, and so do all their animals. Well, yesterday was International Dog Day. I'm not sure how many of y'all either knew that or got a chance to celebrate it, but here in our community in Northwest Florida, not only were we reminded of that, we got a chance to celebrate in grand style. Our local marina has a restaurant, kind of bar and grill place that has sufficient space where we had tents all set up. The fire truck was there so the kids could run around and play near it. There were probably 100 people and maybe even more dogs. But I couldn't help but think of our gospel lesson this morning as we gave some relief to Cowboy, who is somewhere between 12 and 14 years old. We're not entirely sure. But I wanted to show you all this great picture of Cowboy getting relief. And because it was after sundown, relief on the Sabbath. I want you to notice here, I hope y'all can see that. Haynes, Dad, would you give me a thumbs up? Make sure the screen sharing's working? Right. So we're surrounded by dogs. There's a little pool where previously a Chihuahua and some other small dog had taken relief, and Cowboy just came along and said, it's basically a hot tub for me. So took over the entire thing to get some relief. We couldn't help but think of this in the gospel lesson today because even though it was already the Sabbath, it was sundown on Saturday. Even though the Sabbath has already started, we were happy to get Cowboy some water and relief, even though you can clearly tell his leash is still on. So we didn't quite untie him, but we were happy to get him some relief to celebrate International Dog Day. So what does that then have to do with our gospel lesson today? You know, as Jesus is telling the folks in the synagogue, that in particular, the leader of the synagogue, who is presumably Pharisee of some kind, one of regular targets for Jesus in his um, messages of scorn and hypocrisy. The leader of the synagogue says, well, wait a second, you can't heal on the Sabbath. That's work. There are 6 other days to heal. Keep that in perspective and don't heal on the Sabbath day. But Jesus takes this woman who, it's not very clear to us, according to Luke, although he was a physician and was certainly capable of providing more detail. It's not clear to us what the malady was that this woman suffered for 18 long years. But he gives us the symptoms. She's crippled and can't stand up straight, and she obviously suffered this for some long period of time, 18 years, that we know was probably chronic in nature. But Jesus lays his hands on her and says, woman, you are healed. And she immediately stands up and presumably does so in a glorious, joyful way. Just like Cowboy was glad to get into that pool of water last night in the August heat here in Northwest Florida. When the leader of the synagogue, though, accuses Jesus of working on the Sabbath day, he not only rebukes the leader of the synagogue, he gives us a perspective that I think is important, far beyond this simple story or even of Cowboy getting in the pool. You see, when Jesus talks about how any of us on a Sabbath day would untie our ox or our donkey to go give them water, what he's talking about is God's mercy for us. God's loving nature and his steadfast love for us that surpasses not only our understanding, but certainly encompasses every day of the week, every minute, every hour, and so on. Our entire lives, as we hear from Jeremiah, are in part tied into our relationship with God. When God tells Jeremiah, I've known you since the womb, and ever since you were coming along and before you were born, I knew what was going to happen with you, and I'm going to take care of you and send you out into the world, both to build and to destroy, to plant and to reap. And so that message to Jeremiah goes for us too, y'all, that God knows where we are. He knows what's happening to us, and he will show us his mercy, even if it takes 18 years of being bent over to get there. That's the part that struck me as Jesus heals this woman on the Sabbath. It's not just the message that we talk about here at Online Home Church, which just jumps out from all four Gospels, that Jesus is there to tear down this temple culture. He's there to tear down this law of Moses that is so restrictive and that binds people up, that they would even be so bold as to suggest this poor woman who's been sick for 18 years shouldn't be cured on a particular day, where Jesus says she should be cured as soon as possible and on any day, right? That whole mindset of follow the rules, do exactly what's in the book, the Torah, the book of Numbers, Deuteronomy, that Moses received in these commandments. But it goes so much further than that, and to focus on the relationship we have with God. That's why I think this lesson, the Old Testament lesson from Jeremiah, is so important today. God knows us from the very moment we are created, and therefore can save us and share his mercy with us at any time. Y'all notice in the synagogue today, as Jesus heals this woman who's been bent over for 18 years, unlike so many previous stories, she doesn't come to him. She doesn't say, please heal me. Remember, there's another story in the gospel lesson where some woman in the crowd just touches the hem of Jesus' garment. And he says, hey, who touched me? I could feel the power come out of me. Instead, here, he lays hands on her and she is immediately healed. This is an awesome show of power. And this, by the way, is why we listened to the opening hymn from Alan Jackson this morning. There's power in the blood of the Lamb. There's this awesome show of power that Jesus gives to this woman to help her stand up straight. And he does so to demonstrate not just the fact that healing should and can occur on any day of the week, at any time, but that God's mercy is so powerful it shouldn't be restricted to 6 days of the week and these arcane rules that the people of Israel had been following up until Jesus got to Galilee and started spreading his message, including preaching on the Sabbath in synagogues. In other words, this is a lesson to everybody at the time that God's power is so all-encompassing, it can't be restricted by these laws of man. It can't be restricted to a particular day of the week, particular location or time. We just have to be open to it and recognize that when the pool of water is there, just like Cowboy at International Dog Day yesterday, we have to jump in. I had an interview this week on the Christian Capitalist podcast with a man who lives in our neighborhood, but now is traveling. He and his wife, his name's Art. Art and Penny are traveling for 4 months on what he describes as the trip of a lifetime. It's fantastic. They've been in Israel for 3 weeks. This past week have been walking the Camino in Spain. And as I was talking to as I was talking to Art, he's in a hotel where he and Penny had just completed the Camino, and they're at the Santiago de Compostela in Spain, the Cathedral of St. James, which we were just talking about a little bit ago when we're celebrating the Feast of St. James earlier this month. The technology to be able to allow me to talk to Art and his wife as they're celebrating the end of this walk on the Camino was just fantastic. But it was something that he mentioned to me that I wanted to pass along to you in light of what happened next. As Art and I were talking about how he glorified God through his work as a dentist when he had a dental practice in Arkansas and then Colorado, he talked about these mission trips that he used to take. 12 different trips to Mexico to do dental work, 20 different trips to Israel to do dental work. And at one point, they were, I want to say, in Israel. At one point, a woman comes in who is, I suppose it was Mexico. In any case, he's in a foreign country and a woman comes in bringing her daughter. The daughter's been deaf from birth and mute, so couldn't speak, couldn't hear. And Art says, the Holy Spirit just calls me to lay my hands on her and say, I feel like God can cure you right now. And sure enough, within seconds, she started mumbling. This is a mute girl who's never heard and never spoken. She's probably 10 years old. But all of a sudden she starts mumbling. And next thing you know, the mother rushes her out into the lobby so she can start speaking the native tongue to all the people there in the lobby. And Art just hears cheering from out in the crowd. Literally, he had a moment like we heard about in our gospel lesson today. It took a couple of hours, but it didn't take long before this little girl who'd never spoken and never heard was able to communicate with the people of her village and communicate with her parents like she never had before. It's this awesome power of the Holy Spirit that Jesus shows us in our gospel lesson today, and that each one of us, should the Holy Spirit call us, is capable of bringing into someone else's life. And so, as we think about our gospel lesson today and what it means for you, it to me means any single one of us. I mean, Art is a terrific man. He's got a real heart for the Lord and is a generous Christian, but he's a dentist. He was just happened to be called by the Spirit in this moment to say, I feel like God can make you speak. And God did. And so having that kind of faith, like Jesus had in this woman, like Art had in his patient, having this kind of faith makes it potential that any single one of us in this congregation or listening online later on in the week has the power to create a miracle, a space where God can enter someone else's life and experience the joy that other people experience, like, as simply put, as our woman in the gospel lesson today, standing up straight and being able to walk without pain. The other message here is I had a chance to talk with Richard Herron this week over the phone. We'll talk about that more in the announcements. As I see the chronic illness that our friend we spent some time with at the beach yesterday, our friend Julie, who's suffering from multiple sclerosis, just finished up a month-long course of treatment with no change, and now has 3 or 4 more months of treatment for MS in store for her. As we talk about the various chronic illnesses that the members of our congregation face, it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to think, well, wait a sec, if God can make this woman stand up straight after 18 years, if God can put the power of the Holy Spirit in Art's hands to be able to heal this poor girl who is mute and deaf, how come he won't heal me? How come he won't heal my loved one? And the short answer is, as we say every week in the blessing at the end of our worship service, the peace of God surpasses all understanding. And we just have to keep our hearts and minds focused in the knowledge and love of God. It's on his time that we operate. And even though Jesus clearly indicates to the folks that are surrounding him in the synagogue on that Sabbath day that God can work a miracle, God can bring his awesome and mighty power into our lives at any moment, the other part of that message is it's completely up to him. This poor woman suffered for 18 years and then just on one random day shows up at the synagogue on a Sabbath and is healed. We never know when or how the healing will occur in our lives. It's only up to God. But as we hear in our psalm today, God knows us and is our stronghold and our rock. And we just have to keep faith in him to know that the healing will occur when he's ready and on his time. And it's just for us to keep trust in him and faith that that healing will occur in the way that he deems most fit. So as we head into the last week of August and endure the last of the dog days of summer, I hope that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you get a chance to get your own little pool like Cowboy got yesterday at Dog Day and get some relief from whatever malady is that it's ailing you. And in the meantime, keep your faith and trust in God, because he will provide that healing moment to you whenever and however he deems fit.